before we like dive into what we're here to do, Beau, you want to just introduce who you are, what you do, and kind of like your thing?
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Beau Martonic. I run the East Meets West Hunt podcast and YouTube channel and do outdoor writing, kind of anything that is revolves around creating content in the hunting space. But my main focus is I'm from Pennsylvania. I've hunted the big woods Appalachian region of Pennsylvania. So focus on whitetail hunting, hunting in the big woods, which is what I've grown up doing. My family's grown up doing forever. And then also on kind of adventure style hunts, you know, Rocky Mountain elk hunting, caribou hunting in Alaska, that type of thing. Like I always have like, one hunt a year that I just really want to do that's just kind of full on adventure camping out in the middle of nowhere. And my goal with the podcast and stuff is to be able to show people that you don't need to have a lot of money or anything. It just takes some planning and you can make some of these dream hunts happen for yourself. And then also just again the all around the big woods whitetail hunting, which is probably it's definitely kind of my niche.
Yeah, love the big wood stuff. I mean, you're a PA guy, I'm a Michigan guy. We have very similar hunting cultures, different topography, very different. You're
Yeah.
talking mountains. I'm more looking at swamps, where we're at, cedar thickets and whatnot. But I always like to have a PA guy on. I feel like we have a lot of them just because, like I said, lots of hunters there, just like there are lots of hunters here, which is cool.
Yeah, we were just talking about it at camp the other day that yeah, about Michigan people or and Pennsylvania people, like we can get along the exact same. Like you can pick up a conversation like it's somebody from your hometown, even though that they're out of Michigan or whatever, because it's just like a very similar culture, hunting
Yeah.
culture and everything. So I always tend to talk to a bunch of people from Michigan, that's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So Beau, we know who you are. Two questions to even get to know you more. First is you talk about adventure hunting, you talk about hunting the big woods, but in a year, if you had to pick like one hunt that if you could do one, what hunt would you pick? What do you look forward to most in the year? What's your like one hunt of the year?
Honestly, it's Pennsylvania whitetail hunting. It's the thing I've done the most, and I just love it because it's the thing that I spend the most time year round preparing for, and I feel like that's my time that I love being in the woods. I love going out west. I love chasing elk. A close second is hunting down in West Virginia, spot and stock whitetails in the coal mines. Like that is an absolute blast. But if I had to pick one to continue to do, it would just be hunting the whitetails in my home state. I love the deer camp vibe of it and my whole family being involved in it and doing that. Like that's my number one hunt every year.
Yeah, love it, love it.
What's up? We are going to thank a few of these sponsors that help make this beautiful show a reality for all of you. So here we go. So a big reason I would say to why we're so successful and we have so many bucks on the wall is because we use HuntWise. HuntWise is a GPS mapping app that you can download on any phone, any platform. You can look up public land huntings, ORV trails. You can get the weather. They actually have a HuntCast 2.0 that they teamed up with Jeff Sturgis to make. It's awesome. You need to check this thing out. Go to HuntWise, download the app.
I feel like if you go into the woods without optics, it's like going into the woods without pants on. Would you agree with that?
To a point.
To a point. We are huge fans of running binoculars, spotting scopes, and different things when we hunt, even whitetail. I bring binoculars out every time I go. We choose Vortex Optics because they make the best glass in the business. They have an amazing warranty, super clear glass, super helpful people that work there.
Also, if you want to rep some sweet Vortex swag like this warm shirt on a nice fall day, head over to Vortex Wear. Thank you. And use the promo code TFC20 for 20% off your purchase. Saddle game, you need to be in it. If you haven't been in it yet, then you don't know what you're missing.
Yeah.
Trophy Line Tree Sales makes some of the best saddles in the industry. They have 3 different platforms that we use and that are awesome.
I want to make a quick plug for the Wingman with a couple steps. You can take one less stick, and it's like a combination of a stick and a platform. I've been exclusively hunting out of it this year, and my mobile setup is so sweet. I'm very proud of it.
Awesome.
I highly recommend the
Awesome.
Wingman
If
system.
you're ready to pull the trigger on that and you want to get with James and do the Wingman, head over to the website and you can save yourself 10% on the purchase. TFC 10 will get you that. I like to think I single-handedly got James to switch to compound again, but I'd probably be a liar and everyone would call me out on that. We shoot prime bows. We think they're awesome. Great accuracy, super shootable.
Made here in Michigan.
Made in Michigan, so we love that. It's hard to complain.
That's where Jared was made. So
surprisingly,
we like that. Yeah.
You're welcome. So go check out these prime bows.
We are of a firm belief that the arrow is the lifeblood of the archery industry. We've said it 1,000 times. But in all seriousness, we are huge fans of arrows that are durable, that fly well, and that kind of make up for some of my inaccuracies in the way that I shoot. So we shoot Vector custom arrows.
The hammer.
The hammer.
That's Thor.
They are made in Wisconsin by our buddy Isaac. Great arrows. And if you want to go and get yourself some, have a little bit of a discount, use TFC 10 for 10% off. Or call Isaac up and tell him we sent you.
Mm-hmm. You want his phone number? Comment below.
Yep, comment below.
All right, now next question. And this is some serious controversy here. There's a growing trend of people hunting in solids. So solids meaning not camouflage, not your traditional camouflage, maybe earth tones or whatever. So we get this question asked a lot of us. And so I have decided to turn it to our guests. Camo or solids, I guess is the simple way to put it, but maybe more like a more in-depth way would think about it would be like, how important is camouflage? Are solids acceptable? Do they detract from success? What's your take on it?
Yeah, so I'm going to give a little bit of a complicated answer to this one, but I go either way on that. Like I think you can be just as successful wearing solids, and I do wear solids quite a bit. But I also feel there's certain situations that I feel more confident in camo. And the reason for just breaking up my outline, being able to help with maybe a little bit of movement that I didn't anticipate. Those types of things just give me more confidence. And for me, if I have that confidence, then I don't know. I'm a huge believer in confidence when it comes to success, whether that's realistic as far as whether I would be successful or not, I'm not sure. But when it comes down to the confidence aspect, but for me, I think even more important than just camo, the camo versus solid thing is like, I like to wear face paint a little bit. Like I like to put some underneath my eyes just to like break up my skin as they're looking up, whether that's using a green face mask which I don't really love face masks for archery hunting. It just feels weird with my release. So that's why I like to use face paint for that. That's one thing that, now for species like elk, I don't think it's as important in my opinion. The camouflage, it's just their vision isn't as good. But for deer, I don't hunt very high off the ground. A lot of times I'm only 12 feet in a tree. I like being a little bit more concealed, if possible, and breaking up my outline with that. So that's just to give a little bit more of an edge there. But do I think it's the end all be all? Absolutely not.
12 feet, I can respect that. I'm a low hunter myself. I'll go high on occasion. Yeah. Especially rifle. I'll sometimes get up there to see more, but like I bow hunt pretty low. I'm maybe 3 sticks, and I've got this like combination stick platform that will get me up, and that seems to be just fine.
Yeah. And I don't have like the longest legs. I'm only 5'10", so I'm not like this large guy. So 4 sticks that are, only 16, 18-inch sticks, I don't get that high. And right. But I just find trees that have cover. Now where I'll throw a difference in that is if I'm hunting like mature standard trees, then I'm going to try to get higher because there's not as much cover around. There's not enough branches. So at that point, and even like late season, I try to get a little bit higher because there's not as much cover leaves in the trees. So, but yeah, I like hunting low. I don't like steep shot angles, which already in the mountains, like it's sometimes you might only be 10 feet in a tree, but you got 30 feet off the one side and you're at eye level on the other side. So it's like it's different.
Yeah, no, that's great. All right, let's dive into the important issue at hand here, and that's hunting stories. like I told you before the podcast, we're in this hunting stories series, and it's basically we're having guests from all over the country that do all sorts of hunting share a hunting story. So when I say hunting story, it's like what comes to mind when you think of like that's something that I've lived that just is what hunting is to me. And so some people have just shared moments of like great success, others failure, others kind of somewhere in between. We've done bears and moose hunts and everything else. And I know you do a bunch, like you said. I followed you on the when you did the caribou hunt, or when you went to randomly to New York and shot a buck, your first, right out there, which is pretty cool. But what comes to mind for you when you think like a great hunting story that you've been able to be a part of?
Yeah, so I would say, although, as you said, been to Alaska and been to some of these places, one of my favorite hunting stories that comes to mind is a story from 2020. It was during gun season in Pennsylvania. I didn't fill my archery tag, and I had to join the Orange Army out with everybody. And it was like after the first weekend and everything, and kind of struggling to find deer and find bucks. And we were sitting at hunting camp, and one of my good buddies, Johnny Stewart, was there, and my dad and everything. And we're talking, and Johnny just looks at me, he was like, he's like, why are we both struggling kind of going out in these different spots and hunting? He's like, why don't we just hunt together and have fun with it? And my dad's like, yeah, I'll come with you guys. And like, let's just do it. So we went to one of Johnny's areas, and we noticed there was so much hunting pressure coming in from the top. So we started going down on these side hills. And what we would do is basically go down and set up on the edge of some of this thick cover. And my dad would go and wind bump the deer and come from the other side. And we went to a couple different spots and some places that Johnny knew really well. And, it was fun just getting to hunt with him, who's someone I look up to really, him and my dad, I look up to greatly as hunters. And I learned a lot, and getting to be in a position where my dad came across this hillside and wind bumped this buck that came out, and I shot him at 18 yards with my rifle. So I was in bow range, I shot this buck, and he ended up being my biggest buck to date so far. Just a big mountain buck, 8.5-year-old, 155-inch 9-point, and he was just incredible. But the fact that I got to do that, and I saw, my dad running through the woods, like, with joy, and then Johnny coming off the hill, and like, him being a huge part in why I was successful. It wasn't anything I did on that specific occasion. It was just being a part of that. And then the fact that we were like, okay, we have two options on how to get this deer out. And it's like, we go back up where the trucks are. And I was like, yeah, I go, I have my frame pack here. We'll cut them up and take them out. And Johnny's kept trying to convince me. He's like, no, he's like, we got to have this deer hanging back at camp. This is something special. Like, we don't want just the head and the meat being in the cooler. He's like, let's get it back. I was like, all right, well, dragging up over this hill isn't going to be fun. He's like, well, I think we can go down and cross this creek down at the bottom. And I was like, I remember going across there with you before scouting, and it was like a river. And he's like, yeah, you'll be fine. He's like, me and your dad will take the truck around. It's going to take them like an hour to drive around, and you drag it down. We'll meet you at the water. And I was like, okay. So I get down there, and this creek was not a creek. It was a river that was literally, I don't know, 100 yards, 80 yards wide and deep. And I had a pair of hip waders in my truck that I told Johnny just to put on. I said, I'll go through the water. But the river was flowing so fast that I tied my buck to my belt loop with paracord, because I said, if this goes down, I'm going down with it. Like, I'm not losing this deer.
You don't have dependents, right? You're fine, right?
No, yeah. I don't have any kids. So I was like, you know what, this is, and if I go down that way, that's a pretty epic story, I would say. And so against better judgment, that's what I did. And pulled it across and got it up the bank. We had a steep bank to get it up to the road, and we got it up to the road there, and kind of hid down over the bank, make sure no traffic was coming, so no one saw us dragging this big deer out. And then took it, threw it in the back, and we were just so pumped, and went back to camp. I took a shower and dried off, basically gotten some dry clothes, and all my entire family, all friends, everything just came to camp, and told the story, 30 times over, each time getting a little bit more exaggerated,
Sure,
like a
of
good
course,
hunting
as you
story
do.
is.
Yeah.
First the river was like, you could step across it. By the end of it, I'm swimming across it and there's sharks. No.
Yeah.
But it was just the picture perfect, like, just because a lot of times for me, I feel like deer hunting is like a very solo endeavor, and you can take it very serious, which is fun. Like, I love that aspect of it, but I also love the camaraderie of deer camp and, being able to be with my dad and, one of my best friends and hunting buddies, Johnny. Like, that made it one of my favorite ones and favorite days that I remember. And also something that I never really loved hunting rifle season, not as much about the weapon choice as much as like the amount of people that were out. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like it was difficult to hunt deer the way deer are and stuff. But I like, once I kind of changed my mindset of just like, okay, this is going to be different than how you archery hunt, and use that pressure to your advantage, use those things, and be able to do that. I've actually come to enjoy rifle hunting when I get the opportunity to. So it was just one of those experiences that after a long season of kind of struggling to get an opportunity, it ended up all working out.
Well, we talk about that quite a bit. Like, the mindset you have is huge for how you hunt. We always talk about like being like mobile or flexible with what you do. And like, I would assume even just deciding to hunt right with your rifle differently because there are so many people in the woods, like, requires you to be like more flexible or more mobile minded, just so you can change what you have been doing to kind of meet the current reality that you're in.
Yeah. No, most definitely. And I think that mindset shift is just such, I think we all can control it. It's up to us whether we want to make the most of it and not, dwell on the fact that there's so many people in the woods. You're from Michigan, you understand what
Oh, yeah.
gun season looks like. It's the same way in Pennsylvania, and I definitely shifted my mindset with it there and had fun with it. And it was difficult to leave like my own areas and go somewhere else that I've put so much work into. And, I'm like, you almost have this, like, it's 100% ego that you get in your head of like, okay, I know I should be able to figure this out on my own. I should be able to do this. And, when you kind of let that go, sometimes you can have some awesome stories, obviously. And I learned a lot from that hunt.
Yeah, that's a huge deal. I got a question going back. You mentioned that you're kind of set up and your dad is wind bumping. So when this
Yeah.
buck got bumped up, like, how did that go?
So what happened was the side hill, so like the tops, a lot of it was cut. And then the side hills are mostly mature oak cherry stands and everything that kind of went around with some bench systems. But off this point, there was a section of hemlocks. And and Johnny had some cameras there, and he knew about this buck. It was actually a buck that he found 3 years prior, that he looked at a trail camera. He put an SD card in at my dad's house, and that's the first time he ever saw that buck, and what made him hunt in there. And then he had pictures of him in early October, never seen him since. He's like, but that deer has to live there. He's like,
Yeah.
it has everything he needs, and he's just not, going in front of my cameras. So basically, we set up right on the outside of that thick cover. I didn't want to set up in the very wide open woods, because what I've come to learn about, everybody, not everybody, but I'd say the majority of people in Pennsylvania during gun season put on deer drives, and they'll bring 10 people and, sweep these side hills. Well, these bucks have learned to either lay flat and not move, or they'll get up and they'll circle back, and they don't like going out in the middle of the open woods. They're going to figure out a way to stay in that thick cover. So that's why I got so close to that edge, was to, hoping that if you bump something out, that it might come out a little bit and look and see it open woods and maybe tuck back in and try to circle around, with only being one person coming through, and just using scent to do it. He wasn't yelling or making any noise from that standpoint, just kind of slowly working his way through there, zigzagging. And my dad said he heard the buck get up. And it was pretty close to him before it got up. I wasn't that far away from him when I shot.
Interesting.
And that deer came out, and he came out creeping. I was just peering into that hemlocks, and I caught a glimpse of antler. And that was the first thing that I saw. And it was only 30 yards at that point. And then I saw a little more and I'm like, okay, this is a big deer. And I got my rifle ready. And as soon as he kind of stepped out, he was looking back from where my dad was coming from when I shot him.
Funny.
Yeah.
And that's a good point. I've seen that too, where deer know that they know what a drive is, right? Especially in old, if it's 8 years old, he's seen that many times. And we've seen them like crawl, like bucks crawl kind of on their bellies crawling, or like lay with their head real low. Does even will do that. So it's like, I like what you say, where you kind of get up where, not where you hope they go, because obviously you want them to go in the big open space so you can see hundreds of yards, but like if you're a buck, like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, any rifle hunter would love to have, this big wide open spot, and a buck come out at, 100 yards is like a pretty great distance to be at. Sub 20 was a little bit scary even to being that close. So as far as like, it kind of filled up my whole scope when I pulled it up, but that's how I could have ever dreamt that up. And like, also an important thing was our setups were not on these big giant benches. We found like these little tiny terrain features that were just a kind of on a side hill, but a tiny little flat spot that don't even show up really on a map that you could sit on. And I'm like, if I was thinking of a big deer in survival, if I was to come out into this is where I would want to run, because I had originally set up just above there, and I realized that little spot was a blind spot for me, and a deer could sneak right through underneath that shelf, and I couldn't see him. So that's why I moved down at the last minute, kind of when we were getting set up to readjust, and it just so happened to work out. And it could have just as easily came out to Johnny just above he was set up on a similar type thing right over the crest of the hill, and I was just down lower. But another point in that we noticed was that area only had acorns down low versus up high. So that buck was bedded down lower on the hill than he might be on a year where the acorn crop was higher, or in a different situation, so.
Finding them on an acorn, that's, everybody calls it the lull, but I think a lot of it has to do with the acorns and finding them, because, and we've talked like ad nauseum about this, but having a deer go from, very standard feeding patterns where they're feeding in fields and whatever else, and moving to, middle of October, they get pressured, they go find oak trees. That can be tough. So knowing that they were acorns low is a huge deal that I think a lot of people don't even think about. They just assume, deer aren't moving right now, people are hunting. So they just lay low, but it's like they have to eat every few hours. So they just are going to go where there's going to be food, and they also have cover.
You're exactly right. And that's so much easier said than done. Like this year I'm struggling with that. Like I'm 100% struggling. I was hunting out of state until October the 12th, and just starting to get scouting again for the first time since summer. And it's like, I haven't been able to get a bead on a buck that I wanted to hunt. And it's even though I know they're there, it's just trying to figure out that micro location and this, big area where they're at. It's not easy. And it definitely takes a little bit of, a lot of work and a little bit of luck sprinkled in there too, to be able to find them, and that's it.
Yeah. To stumble. Like I feel like a lot of times I stumble upon the spot that ends up having all the acorns and stuff. Cause I had the same thing. We were out of state for the first part of the season, got into season, and actually did get into this really nice buck that I've been watching in the summer. And I had posted this on Instagram and TikTok, but I'm getting all ready, right? I got I'm all ready. I didn't expect him to come where he was coming from or as fast. And I'm actually hunting in a spot near me. I don't want to give too much information, but I'm close to the road, like close to actually like a service road where I'm like yards off the road. And people go past it. And I have just seen probably 5-6 bucks that I would shoot, and probably 3 of them are in the 140s or above, which for public land and in Michigan is like, that's sweet. That's huge. So I'm like, holy cow. So I look, he's coming, and I'm getting ready, and I don't know how I did it, but I bumped my trigger before I even drew. And so it goes dunk, and the arrow just kind of goes just like an inch off and just hits every branch on the way down. He takes off. So I posted it because, I'm not trying to hide all the mistakes that I make. And TikTok, especially, those people are mean. Oh
my gosh.
They're mean. they say mean things. They
Yeah.
were brutal about somehow the color of my shirt they thought was blue, that I must be hunting a spike because look how stupid I am. Just like, and I'm cracking up because the more they do it, they don't realize for me that's just engagement. And if you're on social media,
Yeah.
you kind of want engagement.
Yeah.
And so I'm watching the views go up and also the mean comments go up. But after that, I've had the same thing. I'm trying to get a bead back on a buck, and I'll have bucks kind of show up in areas randomly, but not consistently yet. But like we were talking about it, I think the pre-rut is just starting here. Starting to see younger bucks cruising around at weird times, going opposite directions than they usually do.
Yep.
Scrapes are opening up, and a lot more sign is being left, which is awesome. I got asked though about your hunting story. You said 18 yards. What was the caliber? What kind of rifle were you shooting at it?
300 Win Mag.
Of course. So he blew up when you hit him, right? Yeah, he blew.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
assuming he didn't go anywhere.
Oh no, he actually did. He mule kicked up, and I had another shot in him in about 3 seconds, which didn't need to happen, but I was making sure that he was going down. Like after I knew that the first shot was basically his frontal, and that's where I put it through him. And then the second shot was perfect too, but it was just he actually moved a good 10 yards before I got that other shot in him, which surprised me. I thought he would have just with that caliber of gun. It's, some may say a little overkill for deer, but I know usually when you shoot them with that, they're going to go down. So
that's what I've been hunting with that lately. But I asked because, and I'm not sure if this is the true for you, but growing up being from Michigan, the lever action 30-30 was like the premier, right? That's what everybody had. And I had the over under scope with the open sights because we do drives or whatever. And I most of the time use the iron sights because they come in close and they're kind of moving. So I didn't know if does PA have kind of the same kind of like idea, like the lever action 30-30 type thing?
Yeah, so there's a mix of people. It's either the lever action 30-30 or it's a 30-06 or 700 or a 7mm Remington mag. Those are like probably the most popular calibers. Up until that year, I had used a 270 Winchester short mag, which I liked that gun a lot. It didn't do as well in brush, and that was my thing where I'm like, when you're hunting in some of these thick areas, it's a fast shooting gun, flat shooting gun. I had more confidence in that 300 Win Mag when you get into some thicker areas. So
yeah, a lot more power behind it. That's shot a coyote with one last year. I actually shot him like top of the head. So I have the pelt that turned out great because it kind of blew out the bottom, but like any other shot on one would that's a big gun for an animal that size.
Oh, it 100% is.
Okay. So, looking back, and you mentioned some things that you've learned from that hunt, but like if you had to take like one takeaway, one thing that you learned from this, awesome time with Johnny and your dad out in the woods shooting your biggest buck with a rifle on the side of a mountain, like what was the biggest takeaway, the thing you learned?
The biggest thing I learned, I'll say like tactically, would be the aspect of just because there's hunting pressure, the deer have to live somewhere. So it's like, take a look at, whether that we did it not on purpose, but from driving around and people being in all the spots we wanted to go to, learned that people were on the tops. Yep. And that's where the access was. So these deer, obviously for deer to get that old, they're going through this every year. So where are the people not at, which happen to be the side hills because they're steep and nobody likes walking them. I don't love walking them, but that's where the deer were. And it just really came to me is like, when you get into situations with pressure, figure out how the deer are avoiding them. Think kind of like what the deer would need to do and how they're avoiding them, and use that to your advantage. And I think that's where this situation was definitely that case. Yeah, and also it took 4 spots before we saw a single deer, and it's just like keep moving. That's a question I get a lot is on social media, is people like, I'm going through these things, I'm looking up, I'm trying to find these safe buck bedding areas or whatever, and I'm checking these ideal spots that are not there. Like, what should I do? And I'm like, just keep checking more spots. Yeah. Like, believe me, I do not find, even if as much time as I've spent scouting and e-scouting and hunting in these areas, I am not right that much. It's just I continually, keep going and trying more spots, and eventually you'll find something, and it's just continually kind of not giving up and going through it. So
at the end of the day, it is a numbers game. Like,
yeah,
people, obviously you don't want to go to the same spot every time, right? Because you will blow up that spot, and like, that's not ideal. But at this, on the other hand, it's like, well, just get out there. Being out there, giving yourself opportunities, no matter where you are, is huge. And you said something else interesting about playing off human pressure, right? Like, where do people go? Okay, well, where else would the deer go? We've talked about it. Like, think of it like a piece of paper with, you drop an ink blot on it and it kind of drops and spreads. Well, imagine each ink blot drop as a hunter, and then think about that on a map, and then kind of look, all right, well, where are all the people hunting, and where is the ink not touching? And that's how we've kind of come up with, I'm telling you, on this spot right next to the road. Also, I'm realizing, I'm like, no one goes here. This is the easiest spot to access, and it's a strip of land between two areas. And I can't even say more than that, because I've had people write in, and they're kind of close to what the place I've been. So I'm not even going to say it, but like, it's a skinny strip of timber, thick, but it's easy to get. But again, like I said, it's just people walk by it, people drive by it, people don't even pay attention to it. And that's been, those two things that you brought up have been huge things that we've kind of slowly been learning. And it's hard to learn, because it's like, I haven't seen deer in weeks or days. So I'm just, I'm going to give it some time. Well, no, go get out and keep looking for where the deer are, new places, get mobile, get flexible.
Yeah. And also too, like, just like, so I talk a lot about logging cuts, which are great because they offer cover and food. But when it comes to time when a lot of people are in the woods, that's going to attract the most hunters. One, because most of the logging cuts are located close to roads or have easy access roads to get to them. And that's where I've found that most of the people are putting their drives on. They're doing, unless you find one that's pretty remote, which is rare, that's an area I don't really want to focus on as much, because those deer don't feel as safe as they do during archery season, when you might have one guy going into one, or a couple guys, just going in and sitting in a tree.
Yeah.
That's a lot less pressure than when you have people walking around and doing the gun season thing. And I think that was something that I had to change my framework on how I look at things from an archery hunting standpoint to rifle season. And I think that helped out quite a bit in that situation.
No, that's great stuff. Well, we're coming up on time here. And Beau, I know you write, you do videos, you do Instagram stories, you do an awesome podcast, lots of great information coming out. And so everybody who's listening, highly, highly, highly recommend following Beau and just kind of seeing what you're up to. But Beau, for people who might not know where to find you, like, what's the best way to get in touch with everything that you're putting out?
Yeah, so I would say just my website, eastmeetswesthunt.com, has links to just about everything there, but I'm most active. The podcast is my main thing. So anywhere you listen to podcasts, East Meets West Hunt, and then YouTube is just under my personal name, Beau Martonic, and social media. If you search either my name or East Meets West, you should be able to find it wherever you like to take in content, I guess, from that standpoint.
Wonderful. Well, hey, thanks again for coming on. Everybody go check them out.
Yeah, thank you.